Right, good morning everybody. My name's Steve Connor, as Sam said. Sam, thanks for the lovely introduction. That was really sweet. Yeah, really excited to be here, and thanks ever so much to Pro Manchester and obviously all the sponsors for having this session on net zero, green tech, green innovation, and the bigger picture in Greater Manchester. I'm going to kick off just by doing a very quick intro to what's happening in Greater Manchester in terms of the climate emergency. And then I'm going to get my panel to introduce themselves and tell you what they're up to. And we've got one panellist here on screen and the rest of us in real life. So as Sam said, I've just joined the Greater Manchester LEP board, which sort of directs the economic strategy for Greater Manchester. And we're setting a really ambitious target, in particular for business, around net zero. But in terms of Greater Manchester as a whole, we're one of the first cities in the UK to set a science-based target to get to zero carbon. Our science-based target is 2038. Now, that's tough. If you take a carbon budgeting approach, that means we need to be reducing our emissions by around 15% every year. So it's a really, really steep curve that we need to go along. And what's really interesting in terms of today's conversation is that given the technology we have today and the policies and levers that we can pull to make net zero happen, we've got a gap, and it's quite a big gap, between what we can achieve with what we have today and where we need to get to by 2038. And some people at that point throw their hands up in the air and say it's all too difficult, run away, hide under the bed, we're never going to sort out the climate crisis. But I like to think about that gap between what's possible today and when we need to get to in a few years' time as the innovation zone, where a city like Manchester, which is famous for innovation, in fact, I'd argue has been at the forefront of at least 4 waves of major industrialisation, can actually make that happen. We can plug that innovation gap. And so the conversation that we're going to have this morning largely is around that sort of piece of innovation. So let's introduce our panel, our amazing, excellent panel. I'm going to go from my virtual screen over here first and ask Julian Wells from Whitecap Consulting to introduce himself. Julian, over to you.
Yeah, hi Steve, thanks. Hi everyone, I'm really sorry that I'm not there in person. It looks brilliant to see people actually doing stuff together and to have missed the networking. As it turns out, I've ended up self-isolating this week, so I would have had to do this virtually even if I was originally going to be there in person. I'm a director at Whitecap Consulting. We're a strategy consulting firm. We've got an office in Manchester, we've got 3 offices across the north and 6 in the UK, and we're very interested in this topic, and what we're seeing amongst our clients is that it's increasingly of interest to them as well. So really happy to take part in the panel today, and thanks for the invitation.
Great, thanks Julian. Jen from Thematic, over to you.
Hi, my name's Jen Johnson. I'm MD at Thematic Energy Services. Thematic are actually celebrating our 50th birthday this year, so we've been going a fair while, and we're based in Salford. My focus is working with our clients around understanding what they can achieve with their energy management side, not really saying they have to invest huge amounts, looking at what they've actually got within their businesses and utilising that tech, maybe by adding on little bits that can actually help them. Just do that in a cost-effective way, but get them started rather than it being a huge issue for them further down the line.
Brilliant, thanks Jen, great stuff. Dan, over to you. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, morning everyone. I'm an advisor at the Business Growth Hub, and for those of you not familiar, we're an SME support organisation focusing across Greater Manchester. You saw a video earlier from my colleagues in the creative and digital sector. I work on the green technologies and services sector, so here to support businesses in renewable energy efficiency, smart grids, electric vehicle, waste sectors, that sort of thing. And we've built a network of over 500 of those businesses across the Greater Manchester region.
Brilliant, thanks Dan. And finally, Emily from Deloitte.
Thanks. Hi everyone, Emily Hesketh. I'm a senior manager at Deloitte, and I lead our ESG reporting and assurance services outside of London. So by ESG, we mean environmental, social governance, and I am an auditor by trade actually. So I help our audit teams and audit clients with all things ESG. But also helping corporates in obtaining things like green finance, so green bonds, social bonds, and then providing assurance over kind of annual ESG reporting, so metrics, targets, frameworks like TCFD, SASB, GRI, all of that good stuff.
Brilliant. Thanks, Emily. Okay, great. So we've got a brilliant panel, and I'm going to kick off with a few sort of introductory questions. And then we have there's a if you're here in the room, there's a QR code on your table to post questions online. And I'm watching very carefully on my phone, see if any of those questions come in. So please do fire questions at the panel. But I wanted to kick off with the really important question. I think I'm going to make a question I ask everybody I meet every day now, which is, what are you doing to get to net zero, and how fast are you going to do it? So, Julian, I'm going to pick on you first. Have you got a net zero target? Are you there already? Are you already zero carbon? How quickly are you going to get there?
You mean as an organisation?
And in your life. Let's make it personal as well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think for on a personal level, for a while now, we've been making decisions as a household that are geared towards changing the impact that we have on the planet in terms of the food that we buy and the way that we choose to get energy supplied, and also the way we look at things like use of transport. On a company level, I think Whitecap's a relatively small consultancy. We don't do a lot of travel at the moment, that's for sure. And so I think some of the considerations that we have are quite different than they would be for businesses with more of a footprint in terms of the operations that they run. But that's not to say that we don't place importance on this. But I think probably more interestingly for me is what are our clients doing, and what actions are we seeing there? And I think that when we're doing strategy work for organisations of all different shapes and sizes in different sectors, what we're seeing is that this is a firm consideration now in every strategy exercise that we conduct. We've moved out of the sort of talking phase, and people are looking at what are the meaningful actions that they can take as organisations, and what do they want to stand behind in terms of their social purpose as an organisation, and what does that then mean for the way that they engage with ESG, and what sort of sustainability focused initiatives are they going to put in place.
Brilliant. Thanks, Julian. That's a really good point. Right, so who am I going to pick on? Emily.
Yeah. So Deloitte's net zero target is 2030. So we're kind of doing all the obvious stuff, kind of building, re-equipping those, travel, cutting down on travel, which has happened anyway over the last year or so. But for us, the biggest and most important part of our net zero target is our people. So, making sure that our people kind of have the right skills and are equipped with the right knowledge to talk to clients on this subject, challenging clients. So we're kind of going through a big phase of kind of learning and upskilling our people at the moment. And then also making sure that we've got the right specialists and kind of recruitment drives across the business. We've got loads of finance professionals, as well as our other kind of service lines. So just making sure that we've got the right number of the right people across each division, really.
Brilliant, thanks, Emily. So you've got 2030, good target.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, what about the growth company, Growth Hub? Have you got?
Yeah, so as a sort of advisory office-based business, first and foremost, it's looking at those physical spaces which we own or operate in, looking at our energy use, looking at our waste, that sort of thing, and then moving on to travel. How the employees of the business travel around, especially those with more international focused business, how are they moving around? I think a real challenge for us and many businesses now, as flexible working from home progresses and maybe becomes more of a permanent solution, is how do businesses take responsibility for their employees' behaviour and energy use and sort of footprint while they're working from home. So I think that's a key one for the future.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, isn't it? I know I've encountered some cases where companies have actually paid their employees to switch to green energy so that they can keep the footprint down.
I think that's a really easy, quick win.
Yeah, really easy win, isn't it? Jen, what about you?
Well, I'm the daughter of a gas engineer, so we learnt from a very early age you don't mess about with the stat at home. So at home, we do try and live as sustainably as possible. We have a 2-year-old, so that's always difficult with what they bring along with them. But it's all part of the journey that we're on. As Thematic, we have a really big challenge. We haven't yet set our target date, simply because we're still working out how we can actually approach it and make that realistic. So as a business, we've got over 100 engineers on the road, and we support national clients, often with critical services that need responses within 4 hours. So we've got a big challenge there with how we manage that. We've initially looked at electric vehicles, but again, the infrastructure is not quite there yet for us to allow to continue business and provide that level of support. So that's something that we're really heavily looking into. And we have a sustainability specialist that works with us on that called Becky Jackson, and she's doing a really good job. Aside from that, what we can do in the short term is tackle things like the scheduling, make sure our systems are as up to date as possible, that they're working as efficiently as possible, so we're not sending engineers crossing over when they don't need to. Upskilling the engineers that we've got in those areas to make sure that they can respond to issues within their local area. And just generally looking at our supply chain as well and making sure that we are procuring as sustainably as possible. But yeah, we've got a real big challenge, as probably most companies in our situation do. Yeah. But we'll get there. We've got the focus on it.
Well, it'd be unfair if I didn't share as well. So my company went net zero quite a while ago, actually. We have to offset, as everybody does. So we plant trees with the City of Trees, great organisation. And at home, I've just destroyed our garden with a ground source heat pump. It's just, it looks like the Somme. It's just awful out there, but it will grow back, apparently. Right, let's challenge the audience as well. Does any, hands up if your organisation has got at least a plan, let's not do targets, at least a plan on climate change and getting to net zero. Hands up. Anyone? Oh, bloody hell, we've got a bit of a hill to climb. Sam, what are we going to do? Right, there we go. So, in fact, this is the challenge. Okay, so there was about 5 hands went up. Hands up if you're willing to start that journey. Okay. Some people didn't put their hands up. So I'm not going to say you're dinosaurs, and I'm not going to say try and look a child in the eye, because that would be emotional warfare. But anyway, let's move on. Right, so we'll get everybody's names at the end. Everybody who's pledged will help this happen. We'll make it happen. Right, I'd like to start with an interesting one about tech innovation right now, because there's a huge amount of it going on in the sustainability space. And one challenge I'd like to put before our panel is if you found a great big stash of cash under the bed that you could invest in an area of innovation right now, where would you invest that cash? Who wants to take that? I'm looking carefully at Julian, so I don't forget you on the screen, Julian, by the way, as well. Anybody? Dan? You look like you're ready to answer that one.
A bit of a curveball one, but it would be with some kind of green tech college. I think the skills gap's already been mentioned today. I think it exists just as much, if not more so. And if you look at where we are now in terms of the size of the green tech sort of economy and where we need to be to hit net zero, there's hundreds of thousands of jobs that need to be created. And right now there isn't a pipeline to get people through to do those. So some kind of college that could, excite school children that think, oh, maybe I don't have to go to university and then out, and connect businesses with those school leavers to make sure we've got people coming through with the right skills and trades needed. We've done a lot of mapping of what we need to do to get to net zero, and we need the skills to sort of catch up and realise that.
Brilliant. So that's a really good idea. Now, I'm right in thinking, aren't I, that it's been documented that getting kids into STEM subjects using something like ecological awareness is actually quite a good tactic, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think we just need to connect the dots. I think it would take some ambition from businesses as well to commit, to saying, be part of that process and be more engaged with schools and colleges to take on, so children have got the confidence that there's employment out there for them.
Great, brilliant. You've totally thrown me a curveball. I thought you'd say
sorry.
graphene, battery storage, PV system.
Obviously that as well.
Obviously that as well. Anybody else? Jen, what would you invest in?
I fully agree on the educating piece. We have an academy ourselves, and getting students coming in and actually seeing how things work, seeing how much they cost to run, making that relevant for them. So it not just being, oh, it's so many kilowatt hours. Actually, like that's the same as it would cost to power Wembley Stadium, and so you know,
Brilliant.
giving them that idea. But I'd probably on top of that say, I think there's a big gap between the actual consumption, so the suppliers that people are procuring their energy from, and showing the client what they're actually spending and where they're spending it. You know, we bridge that gap, so we put in things like AM&T solutions and dashboards and so on. But that should be available to everybody, not just the people that are engaging with it and wanting to spend that money. So, you know, things like energy alarms. If you use more this week than last week, well, why did you do that? You can do that on a domestic and an SME level. And that kind of coming from the supply side and them taking that responsibility to like, again, educate and show people when there's issues and what they can do about it.
Brilliant, brilliant. It's all good, very human. Emily, what would you invest in?
Am I allowed to?
Very quickly, yeah.
Quickly. So anything kind of sustainable food related, so meat replacements, things like that, huge kind of growth area. And then also battery recycling or reuse. So at the moment we're seeing loads of kind of replacement of the kind of brown energy sector, and I think we're going to end up with a load of hardware that we need to kind of dispose of safely or reuse.
Yeah, brilliant. And Julian, last one for you. What would you invest in?
Well, maybe not a specific invention, perhaps, but with all the work we do in the financial sector, I think we've seen that there's a real need for more understanding of people's impact on the environment. So I think I'd invest in something that enabled the data to be made available, that there was deeper transparency of what decisions that people make day to day and that organisations make day to day, what the actual real impact is that they have on the environment. And so I think I'd probably like to invest in a data-driven solution that helps us measure all of this and hope that might change behaviours if it was successful.
Brilliant. Thanks, Julian. And while I'm with you, Julian, I mean, there's it's in the news, isn't it? There's an announcement of 15 billion green bonds being launched by the UK government to help us on our decarbonisation journey. Could you talk us through the role that finance is going to play in this?
Yeah, I think it's got a really important role, and I think that's kind of links to my last point actually, that people need to build more understanding of what's happening with their money. So if you think that a lot of businesses are ultimately being funded by investments that are being made in things like pension schemes and other investment programs, the activities that individual companies are taking that then can impact on their share price are all related to the financial sector. So I think that the role the financial sector has to play is quite pivotal, because I think that there's a movement towards being able to qualify that you're doing the right thing as an organisation, and that's becoming more of an expectation. Regulations are obviously going to continue to form around that point, and organisations will be forced to make certain decisions, behave in certain ways, and treat things like their workforce and their supply chain in a certain way. But while when that shift happens, then the world will have moved towards a greener way of funding things, which will have a knock-on effect to behaviours that individuals and organisations then exhibit on a daily basis and decisions that they make.
Great, thanks, Julian. Brilliant. So, next question from me. I'm going to start firing these at the panel. Jen, I'm going to go with you. So, in about 90 seconds, because yeah, I know exactly. I'm just watching the clock. It's very unnerving. There's a big timer there going tick, tick, tick. The 40% of Greater Manchester's footprint is of buildings, and if you start at the roof and run down to the basement, so you're out of breath.
Okay.
What do we need to do with our buildings in terms of innovation to actually get to net zero?
Okay, from roof down, I'll try my best, but not all buildings are the same. So if you've got equipment, so you've got chillers, air handling units, you've got air conditioning through different layers of your building and offices, you've got boilers that are there heating your domestic hot water for your hand washing, and also providing heating through radiators. Look at what they're doing. You know, find out what they're doing. How are they operating? Are they just on all the time? Are they operating to a set internal temperature? You know, you need to make these things demand driven. So if they're only on when you need them and running when you need them, instantly you're a lot more efficient than if they're just on Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 at night. I'd say that's kind of a really big focus area. You might have a BMS system, you might be able to use IoT technology, or you might be able to just look at, you know, if you've got air conditioning, they've got time schedules set in them. Look at what they are, look at what your set points are in this kit as well. And if you've got a multiple estate, roll it out. Say to your HVAC provider, I don't want anything above 19 degrees if you're nasty, 20 degrees if you're being a bit nicer. But you know, this is all stuff you can do, and it's not really going to cost you any money, maybe a little bit of time, but just look at what you've got already within those buildings, and just optimise them, get them working as best you can, and then you know where to invest to save your money, because you've already done the best with what you've already got.
Great, brilliant, thanks, Jen. We just had a question in on the little questiony board thing, gadget, which is, given the challenges of the last 12 months, is 2038 net zero target too ambitious? Dan, you speak for Greater Manchester, I think.
Well, there's a pedestal. I would say no, because for a start, our emissions did drop over the period, so that gave us a little kick. And also, we've kind of fast-forwarded a transition away from a lot of the travel we were doing, a lot of the energy use and behaviours we had. And if you look at how behaviour change usually operates, it's quite slow, whereas we've been forced by the situation to change quite rapidly. I also think a lot of the technologies and products, especially that we need to get there, already exist.
Yeah.
It's then really about the tech, the AI, the connectivity that means that we can use those appropriately. So no, I don't think COVID has made it worse.
Brilliant, brilliant. No, I totally agree. I think that in a matter of a few months, we saw the entire world do an epic transition, didn't we?
Yeah.
I kind of feel that it was a warm-up act, a slightly grisly one, but a warm-up act for what we need to do on net zero.
Yeah, and I think also if you look a year ago, the amount of companies, especially large companies, that were talking about net zero or green, it's a complete revolution in terms of business ambition, I think.
Yeah. On that note, Emily, you're an auditor.
Yeah.
We're not scared of you. It's okay. But there was a study's just come out, an NGO put out a study showing that 60% of the claims made by major fashion brands actually, when explored, actually turned out to be greenwash. So a lot of people are talking about this, aren't they? But can you tell us through, because part of your work is traceability, reporting, make sure that claims that are made stack up. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so we're seeing kind of a whole new kind of scrutiny, I guess, on reporting, on ESG reporting, and I think historically the focus has been on those kind of big extractive industries, but it's starting to move across to other industries as well, and technology is certainly one of those. You know, we've seen challenge over things like Bitcoin mining and the carbon footprint, wider social and governance issues like diversity, inclusion, cybersecurity, and things like that. But essentially, the demand from investors is for kind of proper investor-grade information, which is comparable, consistent, and reliable, really. So, you know, the key there is kind of making sure that there are proper processes, systems, controls in place over reporting and data and information that kind of any business really puts out into the public domain. Ultimately, it is going the way of assurance. At the moment, that assurance side is completely voluntary, but I doubt that's going to remain that way for very long. So again, you know, using technology to really gather that information, analyze it, and use it to tell your kind of green or ESG story. Investors are asking for plans, not pledges. So we've talked a bit before about our commitments. But really, you know, what we want now in a financial world is, okay, what's your commitment, but how are you going to get there? What's it going to cost you? What are the benefits to you? What are the savings? What are the investments you need? And how are you going to finance those things? And it comes back to the green financing piece.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Emily. Okay, we're almost out of time. One last word each, Sam, if it's all right, from everybody. Can we get to net zero? I'm going to ask my panellists yes or no. Julian, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Thank you. Right answer.
Yes.
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 It's too bloody right. Thank you, Sam. Over to you.